inventory. There's fewer buyers out there. So if you've been waiting and waiting and waiting to buy a home, you're going to find, if you go out there and look, some pretty anxious sellers. And because you don't have as many cases where you're going to make an offer on a house and be competing with 8 or 10 other buyers, you may end up being the only offer. You put that together with an anxious seller where her listing's been on the market for 60, 75 days. Guess what? Put all that together and you can negotiate some pretty darn good terms on your financing if you're using financing to get that deal into escrow. So I think now really, and I know it's a phrase that's overdone. Now could be one of the best times to buy that we've seen all year. I think
Well,
people need to realize that and take a look.
yeah, and the fact is, if a couple or an individual is looking at the market right now and say, well, you know what, I'm waiting for things to change because there's a gap in what I think I can afford. You've even just shown that, hey, even though the number is lower, 2.8%, it's now 2.8% further out. It's almost like you're trying to catch a cruise ship leaving the dock and you're waiting for it to return.
Right.
It's leaving.
Right.
Jump on there, get going, and take
Right.
advantage of that, and ride that cruise, if you will, because if it only goes up 2.8%, you're still in the driver's seat when you're the owner.
Right. Exactly
So
right. I agree.
exciting stuff. So all right, well that kind of sets us up for today's conversation, which is really kind of a real estate market outlook for August in 2025.
Right.
And I just we have a few questions I'd like to run past you and kind of get you involved in this, really from, hate to use the word expert after we just talked about it, but let's say somebody who has over 4 decades of in the trenches going through this and still in it today. I think sometimes these experts are not necessarily still engaged the way that Art is. So I think that's
Right.
what makes this answer a lot more valid. So let's talk about just fundamental and financing limits. And the first thing is, what are seller concessions? You mentioned it earlier. So maybe share with us, what does that mean?
Well, seller concessions are basically, the concept is, when you're negotiating a home purchase, one of the things that can happen is, and I of course urge you to do this, is if you're looking at a home to buy and you're contemplating making an offer, very often, and in particular in this environment, a prospective buyer is going to be looking to get a concession out of the seller when they make their offer. Now, the vanilla kind of old school way of doing that is a home is listed at a particular price. Let's say it's 800. You think you have an opportunity to get a concession, so you offer 750. That's one option. But what we're talking about here is financing concessions. And financing concessions basically they can be essentially a couple of things. First of all, what you're going to do is you're going to negotiate not a price reduction. You're going to consider offering at list price, or certainly nearly so. Maybe in some cases go above list price. And what you're going to do is you're going to ask for a seller concession in dollars, a seller credit. And then what you're going to do with that money is you're going to use it for a multitude of things, basically 3 things. Apply toward your closing costs, as well, and that can be, by the way, what we call your non-recurring closing costs, your appraisal, credit report, escrow, title fees, but also what we call your prepaid closing costs. That could be your first year homeowners insurance policy. If you're going to set up an impound account for taxes and you have to, provide advance funds of 6 months of taxes, a seller credit can cover that for you, as well as prepaid interest on the loan. And then the other thing that the seller financing concession can be used for is buying down your rate, either permanently or temporarily for typically 2 to 3 years. So again, you can use a seller concession to buy down a rate or to use it towards your closing costs. That fundamentally, at the most basic level, is what seller financing concessions are.